Hi! Today on Backyard Garage, we're going to go and take all of these uh, plants I've been growing with the onions, the garlic, and I got a couple of potatoes here that I'm going to try and start growing as well. And I'm going to put them in, I got a couple of these trays here, so I'm going to plant them in there instead of these pots because I think these pots are going to be ultimately too small. So stay tuned and we'll get started. It's already sprouted. Maybe a couple things, so correctly taught. You can actually see that. Alright. So I'm just going to start pre-filling this. I got some soil here. That should be good. I'm using Miracle Grow garden soil for flowers and vegetables. Just got a couple of bags of this. This is what I'm using just to get started. By the way, I just put most of that soil into a giant bucket here because I think that's going to be easier to pour into the other side here. I got about halfway filled on that, maybe a little bit less than that. But I'm going to take, well, let me put a little bit more in there. There you go. I just think the bucket's a little bit easier to pour with. Alright. That should be good. I got a decent amount of depth. And I'm going to put in these onions here. Space them out a bit. Garlic here. Let me see if I can transplant this pretty easily. Alright. If you have been watching a couple of my videos, I said I was going to do this during the snowpocalypse. Never got down to it because I had all sorts of other things. You can see they're forming some nice roots in the stem, so I definitely want to get these into some soil that I'm okay with leaving them in. Alright. Now I'm just going to go and fill this a little bit more. So another thing I mentioned last time is that when I planted stuff, I didn't have labels. So I just did some printouts, got a laminator, and laminated the paper cutouts. And I'm just going to stick that next to the plant so I know exactly what it is that I planted at this time. I'm very much a beginner gardener, so this is a bit of an experiment for me. But I wanted to start off with a small plot. I think this will help me get started. I do have plans to make a greenhouse, and that's going to be significantly bigger, obviously. But the idea here, this will help me experiment and make it so that I know exactly what to do when I get to a larger garden. I got garlic, onion, and I'm growing some potatoes. I think those are very easy things to start with. They're already sprouting. These are things that I didn't have to spend any money with because I just had some onions that were sprouting. Same thing with the garlic. I guess I probably should be eating them a lot quicker, although you should buy a big bag of onions at the time. So I always have onions. A couple onions started to sprout towards the end of the bag, and that's what I've had, is just a couple of them started sprouting. So maybe if I continue with this, I won't even have to buy a bunch of onions. I'll have a bunch of onions on hand. So let's get the other tray in. Now, as I'm doing this, I think this would be great for anyone that has either a small yard, you don't have much space, or maybe you're like me and you're just getting started with gardening. This will give you a couple different options depending on your situation. This should have significantly more complex roots. Oh yeah. This is the first one I planted, and you can already see there's a pretty big root system here, so I'm going to take that down in there. So when I was doing some research to grow potatoes, basically look for little eyelets, which I have a couple different eyelets here, and you can cut this in half, or you can cut it down, and as long as there's an eyelet on it, it'll be able to grow. So I'm just going to cut this straight in half. I got a couple eyelets here, 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 and here. I don't really need a bunch of potatoes, but this is a pretty big potato here. Right? Anyway. Alright. And then some of the documentation, it said that you should let it dry out, and other farmers will just put it directly in the ground. I tried giving it time to be able to heal up, and that didn't work out very well for me. So I'm going to plant these two halves directly right into the ground. Now this might be not enough space for those potatoes to grow. I'm kind of aware of that. In fact, this might be a little bit tight of space even for the onions. But this is an experiment, and the beginning to gardening for me. I want to garden for food. Let's see where that takes me. So there we are. Got my two plotters. I'm going to take it upstairs right by my window. Going to put some water in it. And we'll do some progress updates on these as time goes on. And we'll see what comes out of it. Maybe I'll get some onions and garlic and potatoes. Maybe I'm being too ambitious, but we'll see what works and what doesn't, and go from there. And like I said, this is all going to lead up to building a greenhouse and having a garden there. And we'll see how this scales up to there. Alright, well, tune in next time for more on Backyard Garage.